In progress.
This is Infosec Decoded number 52, News Literacy. And Kaitlyn has determined the origin of ransomware gangs.
Apparently, CBS News has an article written by Dan Patterson talking about how ransomware gangs are working with the Russian government. So it's been known for a while now that the Russian government looks the other way.
All along?
Well, no. So previously, it was sort of understood that the Russian government looked the other way. Like it was just assumed that, oh, well, these people are doing their own thing, but it's in our best interest. So, we'll just look the other way. Okay, fine. But it turns out a research firm called Analyst One has apparently determined that the government is directly working with these ransomware groups to develop ransomware and attack specific targets. So it's not just they're looking the other way, but they're actively engaged in this activity. So yeah, I mean, that changes the game a bit. It's not just Russia is just full of crime, and as long as they're not attacking Russia, whatever, we'll ignore it. This is looking like it's full on cyber warfare, essentially.
Well, sure, that's what I always assumed anyway.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, anyway, maybe they got some evidence for it. Anyway, all right, and Irvin's got Debian 11.
Debian 11's here, yay, with a bunch of new stuff. Besides running on Linux 5.10 LTS kernel, so that'll be around for another 5 years. That has a ton of software updates, and then it has printerless driverless printing. I can read. I'm still awake. To USB devices, and it has this yes script that I hadn't heard of before, but apparently it's interesting.
Yeah, I like the yes script. The yes script is much more difficult to crack than the previous password hashing algorithms. Among other things, it consumes gigabytes of RAM when you try to crack it. So it's memory hard. In addition to other things, so they say they have tested it against a bunch of strong machines, and it's very hard to crack the password hashes. So that's the plan. How does driverless printing work? I thought you always needed a driver.
Apparently you don't anymore with the IPP USB package.
Well, that's interesting, actually. All right.
That if only Microsoft did that, they could have avoided Print Nightmare.
Well, yeah, of course. Now, what Microsoft did was include like thousands of drivers by default in Windows, so it's not so obvious that you're using them, but you are still using them.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, all right.
Anyway, do updates.
Yep. And I've got one from Germany where the farmers have figured out how to make money, even though they can't make enough money from the produce. They put solar panels in the fields too, and then they grow like shade-loving things like blueberries under the solar panels that absorb some of the sun. And they say this works out. Solar power looks really big in Germany. And I think this is a great idea, because one of the problems with solar panels is you need a lot of room, and covering your farm with them would seem like a good move, especially with all the global warming, as you probably want your farm plants to be less exposed directly to the baking sun. So I think that's a great idea. They say solar power is the best way to make pollution-free power. It makes the least pollution. The solar panels are made out of stuff that can be recycled. They, sounds like the wave of the future. Anyway, and Liz has got the Afghanistan all-girls robotics team, which sounds like they're in big trouble now.
Yeah, the Afghanistan all-girl robotics team is trying to escape Afghanistan for what ought to be obvious reasons, since the fall back to Taliban rule. Basically, if you're between 15 and 45, you're going to end up, they're coming for you. They want you to be a bride for the Taliban fighters. And strangely enough, these young women actually want to get out and have a life in science and maybe not become child brides. So they're desperately trying to get out. Canada is, there are all these pleas upon Trudeau to let them in, which, let me just break this down real quick. the smart thing to do in situations like this with Hong Kong, and I'm no foreign policy expert, but it seems like the logical thing to me would be to completely brain drain these countries of every smart person you can get your hands on and say, yes, come here, come to my country right away. We've got a spot waiting for you. But miraculously, that's not happening yet. So hopefully these young women and more get into countries where they can actually grow up and have a childhood and you know, get an education and start a life that they want.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear it's not going to happen, but it certainly would be better. I'm watching, I'm seeing a general pattern in this, which is the people I know that care about domestic policies, like Democrats, for things like civil rights, but the people I know who care about military and foreign policies just say it doesn't make any difference whether Republicans or Democrats. And boy, that's incredibly true. I mean, Biden is absolutely as irresponsible and stupid as Trump, just doing stupid things with no planning, without coordinating with our allies. I mean, it's just appalling.
Why wouldn't you get people out first? That's
Yeah.
what I don't understand. Why wouldn't you get everybody out before? I mean, of course, I'm not privy to all the details, so I don't know, but why wouldn't you get your journalists, your correspondents, you know, your ambassadors, your interpreters, everybody that needs out, get them out first before
because they decided to dither around with Trump's Muslim ban and paper red tape stuff. And they even had a place to take them. I think it was Guam, said they were all ready to take them. They took them last time. Last time you had Biddlecome, that's where you typically take them when you have like to spend 2 years fighting about immigration. You stick them there for a while. They have places to put them. The governor said, we're ready to take them, but for some reason they haven't called me yet. I expected them to call me like months ago, because they typically do that. They stick them in Guam for a couple of years while they argue with nonsense about their visas and stuff, but at least they're out of danger.
Right.
And
right.
he just made no plan at all. And he's just lying about it. That's why it's, he's saying, oh, we planned for every contingency, which they obviously did not.
Oh, no, I'm like, did you plan for any contingencies?
I know it's just the same as Trump. He just picked a deadline and said, okay, do it. And didn't bother to actually like pay attention to the details or something. It's a shame. I think this kind of thing will result in more Trump, which I don't like for domestic reasons, but I must say you know, I like the Democrats better than Trump, but they're really, really disappointing me, which happens all the time.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't get out, you know, of an unwinnable war. That's a larger conversation, but you know,
Yeah.
maybe order of operations is important to consider here.
Yeah. Anyway, it is really a shame.
Oh, I'm rooting for those girls to get out. I hope they get on a plane and get out of there.
That would be nice, but I highly doubt it.
Bring them all to my house if I could.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. And so Kaitlyn's got Apple with a phone, a keyboard for the blind.
Yes. So The Verge has an article written by Son Hollister, who we've had on I mentioned on the podcast before. He's at Starfire2258 on Twitter. Anyway, so Son writes this article about how FlickType, which is a app which gives the blind a keyboard. It's a popular iPhone keyboard for people with vision issues. It's being taken down because Apple will just refuse to publish it in their app store anymore. And the reason is not entirely clear. Apparently, it's looking like because this is such a popular keyboard for people with for accessibility, Apple apparently really wants it. And this is what they did with another very popular accessibility tool, Siri, where somebody else developed it and they kind of strong-armed them into selling it to Apple. Well, Apple wants this FlickType keyboard, and they are basically putting up roadblocks to keep FlickType from, you know, selling or putting up the technology on the App Store. And as a result, they really can't get it up there anymore, and they're taking down the main portion and just putting it up as sort of a stripped down version, but it's essentially gone. So now I don't know what the most popular keyboard is for people with vision issues trying to use a touchscreen, but Flick Type, yeah, is out. And apparently, like the reasons given by Apple, either well, one aren't valid, because basically Apple said, hey, you can't put up a keyboard that requires that won't work unless you give it full access, and it does work if you don't give it full access. And two, the issue has already been discussed before with Apple, and Apple said, okay, you can put it up. So this has already been resolved in the past. So either way you look at it, it's ridiculous. And I mean, this is what happens when you have a centralized repository for software that's owned by a single company that doesn't really take into every single type of application into account, or that attempts to strong arm its users into selling or giving them the technology that they would like to have themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard many people complain about this. Apple is very abusive in the App Store. Not only do they take 30% of the profit, which is crazy, but they also they're very famous for approving an app just long enough to clone it and then kicking you out and putting up their competing product.
Yep.
And if the Apple has any version, you're not allowed to put anything in the store that would compete with them. You know, that's why I think this is probably one of the main targets for antitrust, is removing the App Store, because it is obviously a conflict of interest for them to own the App Store and the phones. Those ought to be two different companies. We'll see if any of that happens. But certainly that's what Elizabeth Warren and another congresswoman wants to break up the tech giants. We'll see if they get to do it. Hey, Irvin's got something about the Windows security model.
This is a cool read about how it works in the back end with the APIs, the various things like the security identifier, access control lists. Kind of shows you when you run a program, how does the token for that user go from the exe or from the executable to the file it's reading and the privileges and all that. It's an interesting little read.
Yep. It's a good thing to see the access tokens and the access lists in some detail. And it would be fun to add to it like Mimi Cat stealing these things.
Yes, yeah, that's definitely what's missing here. But it's a good explanation.
Yeah.
See the process.
Yeah, good. All right. And it's funny, I thought this was pretty exciting. Illinois has a class in high school to teach news literacy. And what they did is they took like a typical fake article from the right about like the virus and showed it to high school students, and like only a small percentage of them could tell it was fake. And so then they teach them how to find out it's fake. Like they would just look to see who posted it and see if they have 1 million followers and say, oh, it must be legit. And they're like, no, that's not how you do it. And this, I think, is awesome. This is what we need. I've seen the same thing for seniors who fall for this all the time. And there's training classes where they show them stuff, and then they teach them how you go find reputable sources and check things. Apparently, a lot of people don't know this, and we really should be teaching the young and the old and everybody about this, because it's a huge problem. I remember there's this viral video going around now of this woman at a board meeting just saying there is no virus. The kids are being used as like guinea pigs. It's all to do with this mind control. Ray, you're sending out 800,000 students, children have been kidnapped and turned into adrenochrome, and just this dump of like all this stuff. And she's at a board meeting being taken seriously. There's a bunch of people that live in this horrible alternate reality where they believe all this crap. And we really need people to be more careful consumers of news. Anyway, I think that might be fun to like somehow involve in our courses. You could even have a CTF where you have to like figure out which of these articles is right. And that would be a good thing. Anyway. All right. And so Liz has got the CAPTCHAs patented. So we all have to quit using CAPTCHAs.
Well, not entirely, but this is an interesting article from the EFF's blog about a company called Defenders of the American Dream, or DAD LLC, who is...
Oh, they must be good.
Yeah,
if they named Defenders of the American Dream.
With a name like that, that must be wholesome. Well, not so much. They are essentially extorting small businesses by sending out demand letters to websites that use Google's reCAPTCHA system and accusing them of patent infringement because they say that they patented this completely specious claims. And they say, we'll take $8,500 if you pay right away. But if you question them that they're question the legitimacy of their patent, then they say that it'll rise to $17,000 that they're going to extort from you. And if you try to sue them or mount some other legal challenge against their ridiculous claims, then it goes up to $70,000. And they did not invent this system. It predates their patent by like 8 years at least. The actual invention of it. So, I've heard of this sort of patent trolling happening before. It's really just extortion, an extortion racket, and it's unfortunate because they often target small independently maintained websites or websites of small businesses, and a lot of time, just like ransomware, they'll just pay up. So
can't these people be punished? This seems like it's fraud or something.
that's what I would think. I would think that at some point this would be shut down, but
Yeah.
nothing yet.
If nothing else, I think the FTC would do something to them.
I would think so too, especially now that they're actually starting to enforce stuff, but no signs of that yet.
Yeah. All right. And so Kaitlyn's got Blue Origin. This is Bezos, right? A finger.
Sorry about that. My screen took a second to refresh and I was not able to click. Anyway, yes, so Blue Origin. Let's talk about Blue Origin for a little bit. If I can get to the article. Here we go. Yeah, so Ars Technica has an article written by Eric Berger, talking about how Blue Origin is suing NASA. Now, this was all over Twitter yesterday, and everyone is sort of mad at Blue Origin, and for good reason. I mean, Blue Origin is basically burning all their bridges with NASA right now. So apparently what happened is that for the Artemis program, NASA decided to go with contracts with SpaceX.
Now, what's Artemis going to do? Put people on the moon or what?
Pretty much. People, robots, that kind of stuff.
Okay. And that's the one that's supposed to happen by like 2024. But some essential thing is not going to be, the spacesuits are not going to be ready until 2025. So that would appear to be a problem. Well,
there's plenty of stuff to do in Artemis before we send people. Many robots, in fact, will be going to the moon.
Okay.
Robots that I care very deeply about. Like Viper, which is a great robot everyone should be rooting for. But anyway, so Blue Origin is Bezos's space company, and they're suing NASA because they got rejected over SpaceX's contract. And this happens all the time, right? You have various different companies, space companies, vying for a contract with NASA or the government, and then one gets chosen over the other for whatever reason. And I mean, and just like any shopping, if the customer decides to go with another person, you just go back and you try to make a better product or compete or work for a different contract. But not Amazon for some reason. They think it's fine and dandy to sue NASA for not getting picked. And I mean, as a result, NASA will never pick them again, because who would want to work with people that would sue them if they don't get picked? And I'm wondering.
They may not have that right, though. I know the college is not allowed to make decisions like that. They must put things out for bid. Then there are rules of which bid they must accept. He might be right that he can force them into going with him, whether they like it or not.
There are rules as far as I can tell. So that was the question. Like, why does Blue Origin feel like they can sue NASA? Like I was like, okay, what's the behind the scenes reasoning behind this? And the behind the scenes reasoning is just as shocking as I would imagine. And the idea is that NASA said that cost isn't the biggest issue. It's what can do the best work, right? Like if you can make a better rocket, it costs more, but it can do the job better, then we'll go with you. Apparently, though, SpaceX not only made a cheaper rocket, but they made a better rocket, so they just went with SpaceX.
Yep.
And now Amazon, Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos, I should say, is suing because Bezos is saying, well, you went with the cheaper option, which means that you must have wanted the cost to be cheaper. And NASA's like, no, and that's not what happened. So it's yeah. I'm pretty sure that Blue Origin has just burned all their bridges at this point. So
Yeah, well, it reminds me of the Jedi contract with everybody suing Microsoft and Amazon again, suing that they should have gone with AWS instead of Azure.
yeah, and I felt very similar with that lawsuit as well. I think they're just taking that lawsuit and just rolling with it. And I think this is a strategy that we're seeing now from very entitled companies, where if they don't get the contract because they're so big and so important, that they'll just sue to get it. And I mean, and that's not how business would work. I mean, if I decide not to shop in somebody's store, they shouldn't sue me for not shopping in their store.
But if it's government contracts, there are rules and laws, and I don't know. I think suing to make them go with you could be a valid business strategy.
It could, but I imagine this will backfire pretty badly if Amazon thinks that they can start suing if you don't go with them for any reason. As far as I can tell, NASA did nothing wrong in this instance, and so no one will want to work with Blue Origin. So
Yeah, you're right. Probably. Anyway, Blue Origin did take a joyride to the stratosphere on this thing recently, right? The other
I think so. Well, at least one. The Virgin Galactic did, I know.
Oh, okay. Blue Origin. I
Oh wait, Blue Origin went higher than Virgin.
Yeah, and then they went higher, and then
right.
Yeah, I think
they got mad that they didn't get the astronaut wings, the official ones.
Yeah. Okay. So he'll regard himself as having proven he's better.
Yep.
Okay. Anyway, all right. And so Irvin's got the cops lost the data.
Yes, they lost 8 terabytes of criminal case data during a migration. Looks like the Dallas Police Department and the City of Dallas Information and Technology Services Department let admins know that they actually lost 22 terabytes, but were able to recover 14 of those 22, leaving 8 missing in the Great Void. So cases, of course, are getting hit by this, and prosecutors now have to send out or district attorneys have to send out a message going, yeah, we lost information for this specific case. Yeah, this is crazy. How do you lose 8 terabytes? How do you lose 22 to begin with? What the heck were you doing that you lost 22 terabytes? But at least they were able to recover 14. But still, like what? It's called copy to a USB drive. It's called the sneaker net. There's more than one ways to copy people.
Oh, but this is easy to do. I mean, all you have to do is type the command backward, just like the number one problem in making images with DD. You get it backwards and you wipe out the evidence with the clean disk. It's pretty easy to lose everything.
Absolute physical evidence all the time too, which is kind of crazy, but it happens.
True.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised if I'm losing the data. I'm just, yep. And then one thing I know is the FBI, the way they do cases is they send it to like a central location, they image it, they put it in the cloud, and they do all their work with FTK in the cloud. So if they were to lose the cloud copy, you'd lose all your investigation. You'd have to do it all over.
Really? I thought they'd be using Encase.
No, that's local police use Encase. The FBI is standardized on FTK.
Huh.
but it's all in the cloud. So some clown could totally lose all that stuff doing like a cloud migration. That could totally happen. I'm surprised if it hasn't. Anyway,
Huh.
all right. And so anyway, I was real happy to read about this quasar stuff because I mean, I was a kid, astronomy was the first thing I learned and I thought it was awesome. And quasars are one of these really exciting things because a single quasar is like 1,000 times brighter than a whole galaxy. So how can one star be that bright? What is going on in that star? And this was a big mystery when I started learning this stuff in the 70s. And this is the best explanation I've ever heard of it. It's a giant black hole sucking in stuff, and it found some stuff to eat, and it's taking a gulp, a huge amount of stuff, and it doesn't really burn that bright for very long. It gulps up some stuff and burns really bright for like 20 years, and then it calms down for a while until it comes across the next big blob of junk to eat. And that makes a lot more sense than imagining it could just keep blasting at that rate forever, which is what we thought in the 70s and 80s, that somehow they're like 1 billion times brighter than other stars and they can just keep that up forever. That seems impossible, and it appears that it is impossible. Anyway, I thought that was very nice to learn. Anyway, so and the last thing is the AntiVaxx comes from just one random lady in Piedmont.
Yeah, so I remember seeing this site early on sent to me by one of my totally paranoid anti-vaxxer friends that claims to have been an aggregator that scrapes the CDC's vaccine adverse event reporting system.
Yeah, my right-wing friend sent me a link to that damn thing too. There's a place where you can just report symptoms that's not verified by anything. And so if you search, there's a bunch of people claiming that bad things happened. And
right, and it got totally spammed by anti-vax trolls and all kinds of people. So it's completely unreliable data on every freaking level.
Yeah.
And I mean, you may as well get medical advice off the bathroom wall.
Or Facebook,
Yeah.
which
or
amounts to the
Facebook.
same thing.
No, I mean, there's plenty of cross-functional batshittery between this and Facebook because I'm sure they have their own Facebook group even. But turns out the person behind the site is just some random lady in a rich neighborhood in Oakland, and the article's pretty entertaining. There's some pretty good one-liners in here, but I think it's good to expose these things because, you know, people think, oh, well, they read this and they think there's a bunch of scientists behind this website who are aggregating this valuable scientific data and telling us the real truth, the things they don't want us to know. The deep state's hiding these horrible side effects from everyone. I mean, you grow a tail, but no one knows.
And you become magnetic.
Yes. Yes, you become magnetic, your cell phone signals improve, which sure hasn't happened for me yet. Unfortunately, I did not get my 5G upgrade. I feel horribly cheated. None of my telecommunications.
Well, now we get booster shots. Maybe that will upgrade your.
Yeah, maybe so.
I really want my booster shot. I'm really glad of that because, you know, I'm kind of old and
I think you can get them already.
No, I don't think so, but supposedly November. I could get them right now by just lying though, and I was considering it, but I think I may not have to.
I saw that you could go get them at CVS and Walgreens.
Only if you lie and tell them that you're like immunocompromised. That's why I said, could I tell them that I'm like compromised in I trust in the government? Would that count? But now apparently they are going to give them to just everybody 8 months after your original shot, which would be November for us. So hopefully they'll get it together by then, although my opinion of the competence of the Biden administration is not very high in this regard either. Yeah. I remember the original vaccine rollout was just basically throw it on the ground and let people fight over it. I suppose this will be the same.
No, I have seen some data saying that it's unnecessary and that they still showed really robust antibody protection like 9 or 10 months after inoculation. So
Well, that would be good. The stuff I saw coming from Israel said that 8 months after inoculation, it has fallen to 50% effectiveness against the severe illness in the Delta.
that's
So that-
interesting. But it may be different vaccines too, because I have read some data that the Johnson and Johnson one supposedly has more robust protection against it, but I mean, we just don't know. That it's been just a horrendous travesty of bad data since the start of this whole thing. We just, there's so much, and that's part of what people like this woman capitalize on, is that there's just so much static out there, and there's just even the legit data. The legit data isn't necessarily reliable sometimes because collection and testing have just been so piecemeal since the start.
Yeah, we're really lacking data in America. And I think this fake news stuff about medicine is huge. I think the whole diet industry is based on it, and the whole supplement industry. And it started with pro tobacco stuff. And I thought it was funny. For decades, doctors will pay, a tobacco company will pay a doctor to say cigarettes are good for you. And Nissan, who makes top ramen, has been paying doctors to say salt is good for you. That was a new one I heard about.
Wow.
Oh, it's perfectly fine that our product contains like 10 times as much salt as you're supposed to eat. Oh, salt is good for you. Anyway. All right. Well, that's it for this one, and we will be back on Friday. If I can find the button. I found the button.